What would you guys say was the challenge? I mean, one of the things that we hear is that there's never been a great video game based on a movie. Or that's one of the sort of assumptions. There's very different imperatives for the creative process for writers working on a video game and writers working on a television show. How did you guys make those mesh, and how hard was that for the team down there?
Yeah, they are quite a bit different, but since we started together from day one, we learned what those differences were and figured out what makes a great television show, what makes a great game, and kind of built a universe around the fact that we needed to really cater to both. And it was a learning process. It was a very exciting process. Some of the challenges were schedules work quite a bit differently. Some things take more priority for us early on that happen later in the television show, and vice versa. But I mean, since we've had several years to work on this, we've worked through all of those things and came up with something I think you could see is really compelling.
Well, what's also amazing is Gary Hutzel, who did the visual effects on Battlestar and Caprica, is doing the visual effects on this, and to have the depth of that creative that you can actually hand off to someone like Gary, who then can bring it to life in a whole different way, is really, the things that you just saw are no one's ever seen before. They literally are just coming out right now that Gary's creating, and it's huge. It's just amazing what these guys can do now to bring this world to life.
Yeah, and we work together with Gary really, really closely. We pretty much speak the same language. He works in 3D, we work in 3D, and again, making sure that the things that they're doing can work for us and make sure that the stuff we're doing can definitely work for them.
That's great.
Making sure we can build it.
That's the part I'm talking about.
Because it's one thing to design a really super awesome roller car in the video game, but then our production people have to actually build that out of actual metal that actors can drive around in. Okay. And sometimes that affects the design. And
we'd like them to survive.
Yes. If it tips over and kills actors, it's never a good thing.
Not good.
But that was also, by the way, that was something that we talked about that's what Rob was referring to. What do our aliens look like? How big are they? That they're human scale, that can we fly in this world? We had a very interesting conversation about, do they have horses? Because horses for us are pretty easy, but for them, they don't like that. Yeah. So we're like, okay, maybe not horses, but finding that language so that we didn't have to compromise, as we've been saying, on either side, was something that we really set the ground rules right up front.
And then, of course, the actors come in right at the very end when all of the elegant work has been done. And Tony Curran wants to fly a unicorn. Nobody can make one.
Logistically, it was a complete nightmare. But, we have to dream, right?
Something that really blows my mind about the show is the attention to the mythology. When I arrived on the show, there was a whole history created for these characters, and many of us had to learn a completely different made-up language, and Stephanie had to learn how to write in this language. And I've never seen anything like that before. The attention to detail and the craftspeople that work on the show really, really want to do something that's groundbreaking. And I feel like it's pretty wild to be a part of something like that.
There's actually, that's kind of an interesting thing. There's actually, there's 4 languages which have been designed, written, and to be spoken by David Peterson, who created the Dothraki language for Game of Thrones. And we've got true type fonts, we've got alien signage, and there's grammar rules, and basically every time we want something to be in the alien language, we write it in English, note it, and then he goes and does a translation for us and gives us MP3s and phonetic translations so the actors can learn the stuff. But that's kind of the level of sort of anal retentive detail that we've got on this show.
And it's made learning your lines a whole lot harder, by the way.
I've learned many things in my life which could come in very, very handy at any time, and I've forgotten the majority of them. But forever, will be inseared in my memory until the day I die.
And,
By the way, she just gave a big spoiler.
And I actually mucked up.
I won't tell you what it is.
I mucked up one syllable in the middle there, and we used to shoot, and I go, "Oh, Tony, I mucked it up." He's like, "Jamie, no one knows what you're saying." I'm like, "No, but it was wrong. I need another take."
It's an alien language that's never been heard anywhere on the face of the planet. But let's get it right.
Yeah, just to translate what she said, she's in room 506 at the Marriott. And anytime after 10.
I'm blushing.
That's great. And tell us a little bit about the experience of shooting. And for you guys, it's always exciting to see it. How much of this had you seen before?
That's it.
That's it. I'm really excited.
We're all rookies here together.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, we do a certain amount of green screen work, so there are certain elements that we don't see on set while we're shooting, so it's actually fascinating to see that little clip that we saw, as Grant said earlier, to make sure they weren't playing Scooby-Doo behind us.
I was convinced of.
So, I mean, there's an amazing amount of trust you have to put into those creators that when it comes to the green screen work, that you are actually reacting to what they're actually creating, and you just have to trust that they're guiding you in the right path. So to see what we saw today was very exciting.
I was actually talking to my buddy Jeff Fahey. Do you know Jeff Fahey?
Yeah.
Awesome actor. And Jeff was on the first movie ever to use green screen. And he said when they shot that film, the level of trust that they had to have in the producers and the special effects guys was incredible, because they had no idea what CGI was, and nobody had ever seen it before. It's a really interesting process to put your faith in the people behind the scenes like that, because you know if you're doing, you know, creating a performance that's I'm terrified of this thing, and it ends up being a Muppet. You know, it's
You
not
look like
a
a
CGI
Muppet,
Muppet with egg on its face. It's you. So, you know, the other thing I'd like to put in about the show, you know, both the kind of synergy that we've created between Tryon and sci-fi is the elegance of design. And I think you start to see that there's a unity in design and a unity in the look of the feel of the world between CGI, between the props, the art department, you know, the art direction, wardrobing, and everything else. Because these guys were working on it 4 years before we ever got to the show. And then because as soon as our art department got their hands on it and started trying to build space weapons and started trying to build, you know, it's been discussed, the rollers and the things that we actually have to interact with, there was a free-flowing conversation that went on in design and in the articulation of the creation of this stuff that created new departments. There are actually new departments existing between the television network and the game company that have never been kind of in existence before, because this conversation's never happened. And,
we have a dude whose job title is Mythology Coordinator.
There you go. Now, so if it opens up in second season and there's an ad in the paper, Mythology Coordinator is a really good spot to have. So, you know, when we came in, the level of design, and I've got to mention Scott Stewart here too, our director, who directed Priest and Legion. Scott did an amazing job on doing that, on pulling all of this stuff together. And he's brilliant with CGI. You know, he came through DreamWorks in the special effects department, which apparently is, you know, a big deal. And, you know, was kind of one of George Lucas's kids. So, you know, the practitioners involved at every level have been amazing. We've been very, very blessed.
But as an actor, for me, what I think is really poignant about the show is about us and where we're going environmentally, socially, politically, and what's happening to us. And what I think is really interesting are the stories are a reflection of where we're going, and their characters that you can really relate to. And the show is grounded in a very heavy reality. So I think that's really what sucks you into this world, is that it's about you, me.
Survival and evolution, you know.
Yeah, the depth, the characters. When you read a script for the first time, obviously there's a lot of logistics that go into the special effects and the whole wonderful ensemble of it, and working with Tryon as well. But when you read the dialogue and you read the characters, that for many ways, for a lot of actors and, well, anybody in the business, is the sort of is the crux of our storytelling and our tale, and it's the relationships between the world, in the world of Defiance, and how they, you know, there's different catalysts, there's people with good intentions, there's people with bad intentions. In fact, there's people with good intentions who end up having to do bad things, to do certain things.
Tony's talking about himself here. That's got nothing to do with the show.
Nothing. Being vague enough. But then I think that it's very true about the script is so strong in the sense of the characters are strong, and it gives it a really good grounding for the show and for the town of Defiance.
You know, Julie, one of the things, your character has to deal with politics. You said she's in over her head, and of course it's a very distinctive show, but it got me thinking one of my all-time favorite sci-fi show, Laura Roslin, was a pretty fantastic character as a, right? Come on. You know, on Battlestar. there's something about science fiction that gives, it seems we find the most interesting female characters these days, and I think it's a wonderful thing. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think for me, when I read the script, my first reaction to it was, I mean, the men are great in the show, but the women really hold the power. I mean, every female character in this show is a very strong, very complex, very well-drawn character. You don't have just the mother-wife victim here. You have these very strong women trying to survive in this new frontier. And I think that's what the genre really offers, is a chance for women to have power. That you don't see in other shows. So it was very appealing to me.
That's fantastic.
My wife in the show, Stamatar, definitely has wields power in a very beautiful way. Don't you, dear?
Well, you know, we come. Our race, our alien race, comes from a very strict caste system, and you know, back in Casti on my planet, I would have, as I was almost aristocracy, I would have been passed from a very powerful father to a very powerful husband, probably without ever meeting him. But this town of Defiance and making a new way has allowed us to reinvent ourselves. And so, you know, you see her taking power back. And sometimes, you know, the way of her people, a woman has to be submissive, so she has to go about find other means for wielding power, but she certainly does.
You know, we're going to turn it over to you guys for questions. Please remember, questions are not threats or proposals or pitches or anything like that.
I'll proposals.
Proposals are okay. Proposals are being accepted today.
They're flattering.
I wanted to ask Mark, one quick question though, is you mentioned Holy Grail. Why would you say the Holy Grail for this show?
I think whenever you can find something that really does expand the world, and I think this genre, this audience, and I don't have to tell you guys this, but you want to dive deep into something, and sometimes you can't do that in 45 minutes of television when you're creating a world this big. So to have something that allows access that's not just additional content, marketing, or something online, but really allows you to really interact in a really deep way is what you want when you're creating something like this.
Fantastic. Okay. Hey, how you doing? What's your name?
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Andrew. I have a question for the game development team, actually. How often do you guys anticipate crossover events to really occur where the players can really impact the show? And then what kind of gameplay should we expect in between those events to kind of keep everyone occupied in San Francisco?
You know, for us, it's all about the crossover being a constant thing, and a lot of things we've been referring to about, you know, people driving the same car, shooting the same weapons, similar weapons and monsters, that stuff that you expect to be constant. It really just sort of sets the theme that you're in this broader universe that happens to house the game and the show. There's the big overt crossovers like we were talking earlier with Nolan and Arissa, and really think that there's got to be some sort of, you know, large connective tissue that you can see and experience in some way and see sort of the broader whole between the two with every episode, right? If we're not doing that, we're not doing our job. And then I think that, you know, what's going on with the game when the show's not on, well, we're an MMO shooter. We're constantly on the internet. Everyone who's playing the game is really helping to define that world. And, you know, as Mark said, the 45-minute episodes of the show across 13 episodes, we're on a heck of a lot more than the show is, and so it's really incumbent to us that we create just a really fun game. And so we think that, you know, the cores that we have and then the stories that we develop and the you know, what's going on in San Francisco is, you know, big enough and bold enough and compelling enough to hold everyone there.